Thank you, Your Excellency Haitham Al-Ohali, for officially welcoming our delegates to the Roundtable. His Excellency mentioned in his remarks the importance of working with stakeholders across the digital ecosystem. Our first Roundtable focuses on one such group, the private sector. Joining us now are leading startup founders from the region. We've brought them to the table for a candid conversation on their role in driving digital transformation. What are the opportunities and challenges they are encountering as they innovate and create new opportunities? And how can these opportunities be made available to all? These are some of the questions I will put to this group. Please welcome Mr. Al-Harith Al-Atabi, the co-founder and Chief Operations Officer of Level Z and Skiplino. Great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Aisha.
Mr. Abdelhamid Sharara, the co-founder and CEO of Rise Up. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Mr. Rami Al-Kawasmi, the co-founder and CEO of Madhu. Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Aisha. Thank you for having me.
Ms. Noor Budei, the founder and CEO of Dars. A pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Aisha. The pleasure is mine.
Mr. Khalid Abanami, the co-founder and CEO of Toby. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And Ms. Noor Al-Hassan, the CEO of Tarjama AI and founder of URead. A pleasure to have you today.
Thank you, Aisha. A pleasure is mine.
Mr. Al-Harith Al-Atabi, you are the co-founder and Chief Operations Officer of Level Z, which has been called the first startup factory in the region. How do you think governments can better encourage entrepreneurship and boost the technology ecosystem?
First of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for the National Digital Transformation Unit for having such a prestigious event and including entrepreneurs and startups, because they are really at the center of this whole technological boom. So I just wanted to start by saying that. I think the government role is extremely important in fueling the digital economy, especially with driving different regulations, different legislations that allows us to work in a different way. I mean, for many years, we've been working on, all we knew about business is leveraging finance. We buy a product, we make it better, we sell it for more. But now we have something new, we have technology that we can leverage. And by leveraging technology, that allows us to scale quickly and allows us to sell cross borders. I'm here today sitting in Bahrain, our first startup that we launched is Skiplino, and we have clients in more than 190 countries. Actually, 70% of our revenue comes from outside of the GCC region. So this is something that opened up a lot of doors for us. And the government role has really been essential in allowing us to operate differently, because we do need different regulations, we do need different incentives and to follow the way we work, because as you know, the digital transformation is changing the way we live, changing the way we collaborate, changing the way we cooperate, changing even the society, how we interact with each other. And as this happens, governments need to catch up. They need to develop different regulatory frameworks that are agile enough to catch up with this humongous change that we see every day. And I think the GCC countries and governments have been extremely successful in doing so. They set up a lot of funds, they injected a lot of funds into startups and helped us really grow and achieve the different success stories that we hear about today.
Fantastic, thank you. Mr. Sharara, You co-founded a company that produces events and content that promotes technology and startup culture. You have a 30,000-foot perspective on the digital economy. How has COVID-19 affected the digital transformation that was already underway in the region?
Firstly, thank you very much again for inviting me and amongst those amazing founders and the pride of the region. Thank you very much for that. As you mentioned, I think everyone now is aware of the impact of COVID on the economy in general, but what we've seen in really in specific is actually a very positive gear towards accelerating the digital economy, because I think what governments and investors and corporations had wished for to happen in 10 years or 15 years from now has actually started super fast and kickstarted super fast. For example, here in Egypt, I think a very common thing was that commerce was completely offline, and people were really used to exchange of goods and services on a very offline basis. Now you see kiosks and small shops, utilizing apps and communication tools to sell their goods and services, because it has become a necessity for those kind of small and medium enterprises, and eventually for startups, definitely, to use technology at their epicenter. So I think COVID has really pushed this so far, and as well, this has a massive impact on the culture of acceptance, of that kind of technology on both people and government level. So every single ministry we talk to in the region is now focusing its efforts on accelerating that part and supporting businesses to become more and more digital. So I think it's a very positive impact on the whole overall digital economy part.
Thank you. Mr. Al-Tawasmi, you are the co-founder of Madur, which aims to bring more content in Arabic online. What investments are needed to support public-private partnerships that are designed for resilience?
Thank you very much, Aisha. I think the Arabic content in general, there is a big lack of Arabic content online. We've been investing in different in content in general, but there is still a very big lack of Arabic content. And I think a private company by itself can't really fill the gap. I think governments should work together. Governments should open barriers between each other in order to exchange talents, also funding. You would need, especially in this part of the world, we still need to spend a lot on Arabic content, on technology. Having the content is, in a way or another, you're getting the data, you're understanding all the data, you're gathering all this data, but you still would process this data with the AI. You would need also to invest quite heavily on the talents, on the AI talents in general. You would need having the data or gathering the data is one thing, analyzing the data is completely another thing. So I think all the Arabic countries should work together, private companies, universities, students, governments, they all should work together in order to increase the Arabic content online and help each other in order to receive and get to where we want to be in the future.
Thank you. I absolutely agree with the comments that all three of you have made. I think your experience brings a lot of insight into the entrepreneurial and startup ecosystem that is needed in the region. Ms. Bodei, as the founder and CEO of DARS, which is an edtech startup, your home country of Kuwait, tell us about how you see your company's role in educating the digital workforce of tomorrow.
Thank you, Aisha. So the vision of DARS is to accelerate the world's transition to digital learning. And we feel that COVID-19 is a blessing in disguise because it has imposed this vision on almost all governments in the world, especially the government of Kuwait. Right now, as we're speaking, students are studying online the Ministry of Education has had to adapt to digital learning. So we feel that this is the right time for governments to be able to learn and better their online education system.
I absolutely agree. I'm a big proponent of talent development in order to stimulate the digital economy. And Mr. Adami, you are the co-founder and CEO of Toby, an e-commerce startup that claims to be the first smart Toby tailor, where customers can order Tobies via a mobile app. What are the unique challenges you have faced blending a very traditional industry with technology?
Yes, so we at Toby are essentially a tailoring service, right? But we do leverage AI processing techniques to capture customer measurements digitally rather than the traditional physical way. So I think we are an example of a company that is looking to kind of create a new use case in the digital economy of a use case where a transaction that has historically been transacted or executed physically now moving to digital. So what we're trying to do is to establish a new type of business model. And I think, you know, and also trying to kind of maybe disrupt the status quo and kind of legacy industries. So I think it's important when we think from a regulatory standpoint that businesses like Toby that are creating these new types of business models are not necessarily regulated in kind of using legacy type, regulations that are maybe applied to traditional industries. So I think that's a critical area for us as we're kind of now a hybrid company, right? Are we a tailor? Are we an e-commerce company, or are we kind of a technology development company, right? We're doing all three, and all three areas are key capabilities for us to succeed from a business model standpoint. So what we need as a company to succeed might not be the same as what a traditional tailoring service needs to succeed and execute their business model. So I think for us, it's critical that regulators view these types of companies, these new type of hybrid companies, if you will, in a kind of a slightly different light, and to be more dynamic in terms of maybe tweaking and adjusting their regulations for companies such as ours, so that it doesn't limit the potential of our business model.
I really like that, the idea that a hybrid company and all of you are in some ways, disrupting and transforming traditional industries, but this one in particular really requires a new form of policy. And I think that's one of the great things that between public-private partnerships is creating that precise environment. Ms. Al-Hassan, CEO of Tarjuma AI and founder of URead, your company was founded because you could not find employees with the right skills. So what is the impact of digital transformation on the workforce of tomorrow?
Thank you, Aisha. So the impact actually goes across four main areas. If I look at the automation, so as we all know, automation is going to eliminate a lot of jobs. But again, it's going to create a lot of jobs. So if we hear always that automation means people are going to go jobless. The World Economic Forum just launched a report last month. It's actually stating that by 2025, 85 million jobs are going to be eliminated. But by eliminating 85 million, we're creating 97 new million jobs, which means 12 million new opportunities. If I would imagine how or describe the work in the future, it's going to be meaningful and smart, because human beings are going to be required to do the more meaningful, creative skills. Like if I'm going to give a short example on what we do internally on the AI. When we use machine translation internally that we built, it's technically just to help our translators speed the work and eventually leave their creativity for the more difficult tasks instead of them spending a lot of time on the tedious tasks. And the second area is definitely reskilling. So we all know that reskilling is very important. Developed markets expect 40 to 60% of their current staff or employees will require reskilling from technical to emotional intelligence and cognitive. So without reskilling, we will not be able to adapt to new jobs that are needed. The third part is definitely freelancing. So the Arab Youth Survey launched actually their survey early 2020, and it indicated that by I think by 2030, we're going to have 43% increase on people wanting to go to independent and freelance work, which means we have as companies, as government, to adapt to this new norm, because the legislation, the regulation, even the companies is going to change. This pandemic proved to be that most of us weren't really ready for it. We were all taken by surprise in the early days. Then we adapted. A lot of companies today launched that we're not going to go back to office permanently, like Kareem and others, even global companies. So the remote work opportunity is going to be a huge shift in the DNA of how we do business and how we imagine business going to be moving forward.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. I think this whole idea of whether automation creates jobs or takes away jobs is the more important question is how can we all prepare for the new tasks? Well, some tasks are being replaced, but there's a lot more opportunity, and we have to have that outlook. Otherwise, I think we would be unable to take advantage of the opportunities. Mr. Sharara, how can nations better leverage the collective power of tech companies, universities, individual talent focused on the future of the digital economy?
Well, that's an incredible question, actually. And I believe each and every panelist can help me answer that. And one part of how I see and foresee how this is happening is actually the public-private partnerships. So governments should more and more encompass having startups and technology companies and young people, coming up with their own businesses, yielding into their sort of supply chains and not just rely on big companies in the terms of sourcing suppliers and things like that. This is one way. The second way is, a lot of those very big problems that we face in the 21st century have really simple solutions, and usually as a key executive in a government, you have 1,000 things on top of your shoulder, and sometimes brainstorming or crowdsourcing ideas and innovations for those kind of challenges would be a great thing. So I would love to see a platform that bridges the gap between the decisions that happen on a daily basis on a governmental level and entrepreneurs and young people coming up with solutions for those kind of things, and then those solutions can easily get funding or get buy-in from the government happening. So I believe crowdsourcing and crowd innovation is also a great part. The last thing is, as we see mostly in places like Silicon Valley and all over Europe, and it's happening now in the region actually as well, is some of the public and insurance money is usually invested in venture capital as an asset class. And the byproduct of that is that VCs have more cash to invest in young companies, and a company like Kareem, as we mentioned, or Souk, or the amazing companies that are on the panel right now, all of us are solving a problem that has a social impact, right? It is a business, but it still makes people's life easier. It makes people's experiences better, and it makes it more livable as a nation. So I believe that kind of investment is really worth the whole push and the whole focus.
Thank you for that. I mean, I find this idea of a platform and crowdsourcing and crowdfunding idea is really powerful. And I think that if there can be a a policy around it, then it can be very systematic instead of just leaving it only to the private sector, but a partnership between the public and private sector, as you recommended. I'd love to hear if anybody else has some thoughts on it. Mr. Abanami, do you have some comments on this idea of how a nation can bring these, talent, companies, and government together to advance tech?
I think for me, the concept of cohesion is critical. And what I mean by that is it's critical that outputs from kind of education system and the talent and skill sets that we have are consistent and are key inputs to research centers that are focused on maybe the development of the new emerging technologies. And also that research is also consistent with kind of the needs and requirements of the tech sector, right? So from an education standpoint, there's obviously a huge demand for digital skill sets for computer scientists, electrical and computer engineers, data scientists, graphic designers, etc. These are all key resources, and these resources fuel kind of the research and development, whether in research institutions or in private sector entities and tech companies. These are kind of the constructors, if you will, of the new kind of types of use cases of tomorrow in the digital economy. And then you have the research centers that are, that conduct critical research on key emerging technologies or the convergence of these technologies. And that will help tech companies to take this research and kind of to use this talent to then focus on the development of the new use cases. Right, that will help them develop new business models that will disrupt existing ones, and that will help shape value propositions that are truly, competitive on a global landscape. So for me, it's critical that there is cohesion, right, to maximize, the outcome and potential of these different elements.
I really like that, this idea that it's a value chain, and every part of that needs to be addressed with a coherent approach. Otherwise, you would miss some part of how innovation and scalability would happen. Ms. Budehi, what specific improvements to digital infrastructure would accelerate innovation in your country?
Thank you, Aisha. Actually, we are very lucky in Kuwait that it is one of the economies where it is already kind of tech savvy. We have the highest online payment penetration rate in the region. We have the highest mobile penetration rate in the region. So Kuwait as an economy is already great, is a great foundation for any digital company. I just wanted to mention and to add to what Abdul Hamid and Khalid said, because it is very important about the public-private partnerships. If we want to really have strong, independent economies, we have to empower the private sector. And the future of the private sector is startups, because startups are scaling up really fast with digital transformation. So governments really do have to work with startups and not just shy them out because they think, oh, this is just a startup, we'd rather go with larger companies. They need to empower the startups in their country.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a very powerful statement. The future is with startups, which is basically all of you on this panel, and I think that is made possible through policies, through platforms, but regulation also has to suit it. And I guess I would come to you, Mr. Al-Kabasmi. Which regulatory areas should receive the most attention in the next 5 to 10 years?
To be honest, I think in general, in the Arab world, if we want to really support the startups, we should try to find out in a way or another how can we come up with, let's say, a regional regulation for every single country. Because if we don't end up supporting our startups, whether from regulation, from funding, from exchanging talents, other companies from outside would come, and now it's very easy to really try to solve this problem in the region. So I think we have to work on the regulation. I think whether in Jordan, in GCC, or in anywhere else in the Arab world, I think we can really solve those problems.
Thank you. No, I would agree with that. And Mr. Dawi, what specific improvements to digital infrastructure and even to capital infrastructure in terms of fundraising, etc., would accelerate innovation in your country?
I think to answer that question, I want to answer it in a broader way. Digital transformation is moving very fast. And I think the challenge we're seeing here in the GCC and in the Arab countries is that we're constantly trying to play catch up. So transformation happens, then we have to go, oh, we need this regulation, we need to do this, we need to do that. And the problem, when we try to implement that, what we do is we go look for the best practice on a global level and try to copy that, bring it to our region. And that process is very slow. And these regulations are not always best fit for our society, for the way we work, for our business environments. So that's one challenge I'm seeing a lot today. I think what we need to do is really have a regulatory framework that's extremely agile, that actually regulators can come and sit down with entrepreneurs, sit down with startups, just like what we're doing here today, and constantly evolve, constantly change the regulation to suit us, to suit our needs, not what startups are facing globally, but what startups are facing here in the region. If we are able to do that and really address the needs as they come immediately, I think that will be something that we can, that will really help us, move forward quickly. Another thing would be, I've seen a lot of countries introduce things like regulatory sandboxes where companies can come and set up a business and really test their ideas and see what happens. The challenge with that as well is that it's only constricted to the market that they have access to. So if I'm in Bahrain and I'm signing up to our regulatory sandbox, I only have access to the Bahraini market. If I'm setting up in Saudi, I only have access to the Saudi market. So we need to also start cocooning in each individual market and have some sort of regulatory sandbox that I can connect with all of the Arab countries. I think that will also help us a lot. When it comes to funding, I know we can sit here and talk about it for hours, but if I have to choose one topic that I would talk about is, I think one of the biggest challenges or mistakes we're doing is that, yes, we're putting a lot of funds into the market, we're investing a lot into startups, but we're chopping it up. So we're introducing huge funds and then we're giving small amounts to different startups. I cannot give someone $50,000 and expect them to make $2 or $3 million of revenue each year. If I want to create those kind of startups, I need to make more funding available. I need to make more bigger tickets available. Because all I'm doing right now is I'm attracting entrepreneurs who are probably fresh graduates. They just got out of university, so they want to start up with small capitals, while I need to be attracting people, more seasoned entrepreneurs. We've seen that on a global level, the average age of really successful entrepreneurs is actually above 40. And these guys are typically have more experience, they require more funds, they require better financial support. So, and of course, this topic we can go on and on about it, and I'm sure my panelists here have other comments about it, but I think those are the main things that I would focus on.
Thank you. I think that makes a lot of sense. The idea of having cross-border sandboxes is very powerful. And I think the Series A, Series B crunch of funding continues to be a problem in markets that are just developing venture capital for startups. And we in Singapore and Southeast Asia have also faced this crunch. So I think this is very valid, and to have very big companies, you do need to provide precisely that kind of funding. I don't know if Ms. Hassan, this is something that I also want to kind of ask you. You know, part of the understanding of skills is also, you know, what kind of skills are important for you know, the workforce of the future in particular. Is it creativity? Is it tech skills? Is it business skills? Are they some skills that you think are very, very important and that really should be started in the education system itself as well?
Absolutely. So I think it's not only about whether it's creative or technical. Definitely STEM education is very important. Engineering, technology is crucial. Like creative skills are vital as well. The issue we have today that there's a huge disconnect between the education system and what the market needs. So if you want to hire engineers, you have to hire engineers that got educated with actually old material, old curriculum that's outdated. This space is very rapid when it comes to change. So you study something today and you study a language that changes completely tomorrow. What needs to happen is there has to be a dialogue between the educators and between what the market needs. And there has to be some way like where the government can incentivize companies to reskill engineers or reskill talent. You can't rely only on the universities, and you don't have to only be a computer science grad to find a job. So you can eventually look at the talent that graduated today and can't find jobs and reskill this talent into something that the market needs. So there has to be a way where the market speaks to the educators, and there has to be a way where the government interferes by giving incentives to private sector to reskill the needs they actually require. This is something that we've been trying to do internally, to be honest. We tap into boot camps today and get fresh grads from them, not only from universities.
That's very interesting. And that's what we see now, precisely as you were saying, that actually more than just theory and theoretical degrees, bachelor's, master's, more and more companies are looking for skill certificates, and they can come from anywhere, basically. And the private sector has a very strong role in being at the cutting edge of innovation. You know, as all of you are developing your companies and have some great startups, I want to now kind of talk about the next 10 years. For example, Mr. Abanami, where do you see your company in 10 years?
Wow, that's such a difficult question. I think as a startup, you're constantly exploring, right? Exploring new types of business models. You're testing new types of business models. You're analyzing the types of new technologies that are moving the needle, you know, for innovation, etc. Obviously, our objective is you know, we are a company that is focused on delivering, you know, kind of fast, instant, you know, service to customers that want tailored clothing, right? So, and for us, a key input for that is not only the kind of the technological excellence and working on our internal IP to make sure that we have the right, you know, levels of accuracy when we extract measurements, but also it's critical to always think about the customer experience, right, end to end. So this is not just about, you know, you do the best engineering, etc. It's about, you know, how can I develop the best value proposition that can compete regionally or globally? And here you need to think about so many elements, right? Everything from kind of the product design to, you know, even kind of the endpoint delivery and kind of your logistics partners and how fast can they deliver and how reliable they can deliver. So I think it's difficult, honestly, to anticipate what's going to happen in 10 years. As a startup, you're constantly just focusing on kind of making sure that you're evolving correctly, you're making the right investments, and that you're designing your value proposition in a way that can be profitable and scalable going forward. So that's the best answer I can offer. But I think the constant is there's always change. emerging technologies are constantly introducing kind of new curveballs, right, in the market. And I think as emerging technology evolves, as kind of new opportunities and challenges will be ahead of us. And you know, I think this is the best answer I can provide on that question.
I think it's a great answer, and it speaks to what all of you have been saying. It's about customer centricity. Well, thank you so much to all our speakers for joining us today. It was an amazing panel. I really enjoyed it and learned a lot, and I look forward to following all your companies in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Aisha.
Thank you, Derek.